before I start, I just want to kind of get a feel for people's understanding of Ruby, how familiar they are with it. So everybody that's worked with Ruby or just touched it under a year, hands up. Oh, okay, very cool. But between a year and I'd say 3 years. Okay, and 3 years and up. All right, so there's quite a nice mixture here, and that's really great. That's a sign that Ruby is going in a good place, right? So my wife is a biologist, and I am a programmer, so that makes for a lot of interesting conversations, right? A biologist and a programmer walk into a bar. And so when she comes home and she starts talking to me about the things that she's learned, I'm like, I've got my programming goggles still on, and I'm thinking, whoa, this sounds really familiar. And I think a lot of this has been talked about. So I'm just going to give a very brief introduction into it, and that's that we are very complicated computers, right? We have tons of inputs. We get inputs from visual, from sound. What you're hearing right now is being computed in your brain. It's firing off a whole bunch of API requests, and those are hitting little database nodes throughout your brain. And each of them are responding with very complicated responses that then get sorted and adjusted. And so, we have quite an intense body, and I mean, the things that we do are actually being likened to how we actually function. But we are also not very great computers, and I have two stories that can prove this. One of them is, once I was holding my phone, right? And I think some of us have done this, and you're busy typing with one hand and it slips, right? And then all of a sudden, you get that API request, falling phone. And your brain's like, don't worry, I got this, right? Arm, go down, catch it, and your arm responds 500, request was too late, and then you kind of hit your phone away, and then your legs, you're visually seeing this phone now fall, so you have all this other visual stimulus of things falling, and the next step is your legs like, don't worry guys, I got this. And it comes with 200. And next minute your phone travels across the floor and then hits and smashes, and then you just feel like your brain's just status 418, right? I'm a little teapot. The other thing that kind of indicates to me that we're not the greatest of all computers is that we become bored. Once we've learned something, we become disinterested in it. And that's quite interesting, right? Because a computer, once it knows 1 + 1 is 2, it can do that over and over really efficiently. But once we learn something like that, it becomes quite boring to do the same thing over and over. So every living thing that's ever lived on this earth, their core purpose, right, is to gather as much knowledge as necessary to survive, and then when it splits, or there's a small single cell, when it splits, it passes that knowledge on to those that come next. And that's why viruses are very hard to kill, because once a virus learns, okay, antivirus, I know how to defeat you now, it tries to pass that knowledge on to the things that it comes afterwards. And so this story kind of comes all from a question. And this question started at Ruby Decamp. I'll give you a little bit of feedback for those that don't know. Ruby Decamp is South Africa's other Ruby conference. It happens up at Nelspruit, and it's an unconference, I shouldn't say conference. It's also 3 days, and the first day is more of like a hack. We all get together. We did Conway's Game of Life for those that have done that, like a Rails bridge thing. We do a separate pathway for all the guys that are new to Ruby, and we'll do cones or something. And then at the end of the 3 days, I was just thinking to myself, man, it was so fun, so awesome. I learned so many things, and it kind of got to me thinking, but I use Ruby every day. I'm privileged like that at work. And I'm like, but how is there this big disconnect that sometimes at work, I'm like, this is kind of getting boring now. But at these events, it's super exciting, but I'm working with the same language. And so that kind of question stuck with me, and this kind of is what I led up to. Why does programming feel so different when working on personal projects than going to events like this? And so this thing haunted me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be like Matt Damon. I'm going to science the crap out of this thing. So Mythbusters has this quote. They say, the difference between messing around and science is writing things down. So I started doing that. Right? And so my project went I wanted to have like I was a control group, so I kind of wrote down my own answer about why I thought that there was this disconnect. And then I asked 25 developers to kind of give me their responses. And so some of them had a very negative focus, right? So this is some of the responses I got, right? It can become procedural. You don't have, sometimes we have to work with assholes. That was one of them, right? There's usually a lot of pressure around what I have to do. And sometimes, but most of the responses actually were very positive. And so all of them kind of referred to their passions, right? The things that you're doing at these events were closely aligned with those things. They get to be creative, They get to do whatever they feel like. And that was really interesting. So I wanted to document how maybe bringing in these sort of elements into my daily life would change the way I saw this. And so at the end of the day, I started thinking to myself, this question that I'm actually asking people is, how do they feel? And that's a very intense question. It's something that we should all be asking ourselves, a bit of introspection. And so I started thinking, why choose this job out of all the jobs that are available? I've worked in many different industries, so I started off gluing books together. That was where I started. And then from there, I worked in a lumber mill, cutting down trees. And from there, I started teaching. So I've moved from like one industry to the next. And I think my destiny was calling me because I started off in programming and I ended back here. There's this really great quote by the Oatmeal, that journeys require endpoints. Otherwise, you're not Frodo. You're just some homeless guy wandering around with stolen jewelry. Right? And so that kind of got me to that point, right? What is the endpoint? Why do we program? Right? Where's our heart at? Why do we write this little piece of software? By the way, my wife drew all of these, so I don't have to put source or anything. Do we do it for money? That's a big question, and then obviously, like the little person inside of you is like, nah, I don't do it for money. But then if I were to say, if the whole industry was to say, what, developers are not worth that much anymore, let's just pay them half of what you're currently getting. Would you continue doing what you do? And I think because, being a developer it's quite a buzz thing right at the moment, right? Everybody wants to be a developer. All the guys that are going to university, it's becoming a more popular thing. Back in the 1990s, when I was working on my 486, everyone thought I was a weird kid. But now it's becoming like the cool thing, right? And I think a lot of people that are going to be coming into the industry in the next few years, you're going to start seeing that this might be a major driver for them. So as I go through these, just think, these could be contributors. It doesn't have to be the sole reason why you develop or program. Do we do it for fame? Right? Do we code for fame? To become like, the next Avdi Grimm or like other really cool guys? Do we code for Sparta? Right? Do we do it for glory? Right? Sometimes just figuring out that one bug that's just been messing with you is the thing that you code for. You seek it independently. Recently, I spoke to a developer and asked them, why do you code? And she's like, I do it because I can. I'm really good at it. Right? She doesn't go home and practice it at home or try any new things, but when she's at work, amazing developer, absolutely stunning. Like a lot of the stuff that she pushes out, it's just amazing, but she does it because she can. Right? And the other thing that you can think is that I do it because I enjoy doing it, right? So I think this is kind of where I'm aligned, but I think many of those other things kind of contribute to why I code. But these don't have to be your only passions, right? You can have other ideals. So like a big thing for me is education, right? Education is really huge. And so putting these two things together can be really great. And it wasn't until at that event, Kenneth Carmer, who's not here, right, he said this. He said, Ruby is this fun language that you just fall for. And at that time, he wasn't working in it in his everyday life. And so a lot of the developers that did come to the RubyD camp, they all had this opinion. We had a lot of .NET guys that had come and they wanted to see what it's like. But it wasn't until this was said that it actually hit me like a bucket of bricks, right? I started thinking, imagine for a second that Ruby is not this language, but it's a person, or like something that you can build a relationship with. But if you only get to work with Ruby in a work context all the time, it's like having your wife work with you in the same company, but you can't, like, show any sort of affection because that'll break company policy. And so you're very personal and business related. But when you go home again, you have to like have this completely different relationship. No business here, love. But if you deal with them only in a work context, when you go home and you're like, yeah, that client, you did this really rubbish thing, right? You only talk about work. Eventually that relationship can become tainted. Just like any relationship with any person. So if you don't have this connection with Rails in a fun way, or Ruby in a fun way, you're going to eventually have this like one-sided view of where you're going. So in order to keep this healthy relationship, you have to do like you would do with anything, right? Any relationship, you have to go out and have date nights, have fun things together, right? And do some things that you would normally not do when you're at home, or leave all the kids in one room with lots of soft stuff and lots of sugar, and then leave just to get a bit of time between the two of you. And so this kind of idea sunk with me, and I was just thinking about it. I bet there's somewhere this astronaut who, as a kid, was making bottle rockets in his garage, and gluing all the pieces and making the best bottle rockets. He's thinking, I'm gonna be the best astronaut. And when he gets to being an astronaut, he's on the ISS and he's like measuring distances between cables and stuff, and it's completely different to what he first expected as a kid, but it's just kind of grown into that sort of a position. But when he gets back down to Earth, goes into his garage and starts working on the stuff that makes him happy again. Right? So you remember all the fun bits, and you remember why you decided to spend time with that language. All right? This is a really powerful quote. Whether a thought is spoken or not, it is a real thing, and it has powers of reality. And so this thought was just stuck in my head. I'm like, nah, I need to do something about that, right? It had this power of reality over me. I had this like itch. I needed to figure out, what can I do? How can I improve my relationship with Ruby? And so I kind of structured out a few date nights. So I've got a few date night ideas for you guys and Ruby. Right. First date night, memory lane. Okay. All right, when you open up some of the books, and maybe your photo albums, and you're looking through it, you're like, I remember my hair looked like that. All right. First one is just reread a good book. Who remembers these guys? Or remembers this? Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is what I first got exposed to when getting back into programming. I wrote a lot of Delphi, and so I sold the application. I just swore to myself, never again. I'm never touching a computer again. Right? It was just like the worst thing. And then I met a really, really talented programmer who kind of pointed me in the way of Ruby. He's like, no, give it a try. Okay, here's a challenge. I'll give you a bet. If you can learn Ruby in a weekend. And so I was like, okay. He's like, well, here's 2 tests. If you can pass both of these tests, we've got a job for you doing Ruby. And so this was a bit of a thing. So I was teaching at the moment. I was thinking, okay, let me give it a try. So I go into the computer, type in Ruby, how to learn Ruby. And this is the first thing that popped up. And so from Friday night to Saturday night, that's what I did. I didn't even sleep. I just read this whole book. And it completely changed my world because it changed from what I knew was this like very, work-centric programming language into something that was fun. Something that, like, as I was going through it, I couldn't put it down. It was just like a really good book. And this has happened over and over and over. These are some really good books that I've read in the past. And some of them, are very tightly coupled to the actual language itself. So reading it, you're going to see a different syntax. Like the Ruby lang, I read the one when it was 1.8 and then 193. So it's a completely changed the language. But a lot of these books, right, they carry principles that are still relevant today. And rereading them brings back memories of when you were first reading it. But it also gives you a new perspective because, I first read the practical object-oriented design in Ruby. I read that probably like way back in 2010. And then I reread it just recently to do a training at our office. And I was thinking, this is so good. I've been programming for like 5 years, and now I'm rereading this book again. It just like opened me up, and I was like, dang, I wish I had reread this sooner, because there's a lot of great principles and things that maybe had slipped past, right? So doing this, as science is, like my wife would leave me if I didn't have to explain, okay, this is what I did, this is the experiment, and this is what I learned from it, right? So here's some learnings, right? Sometimes going back is going forward. That was quite interesting, because I never really thought that, reading some of these older books would actually bring back or, strengthen my knowledge around Ruby, and it did. And that led me up to the next thing, is that you'll never remember it all. You'll never. And this is something that gets emphasized over and over and over. No matter how good a developer you are, you only have your brain's only consuming that much, so much. All right, date number 2, the coffee date. All right. I've heard a lot of times when I speak to developers and I say, okay, what do you do to improve your skills? And it's like, it's really hard. We don't have time. Maybe they'll go to coding coffee, spend like 15 minutes. And so doing something that only takes 15 minutes is a very cool way of just relearning the language or keeping up with the language. And the first one seems really stupid, but it's Ruby cones. This is a very great source of just keeping up to date with Ruby and all of its little nitbits. And it wasn't until I was at the D camp, and I thought I kind of got Ruby down. I think I got it. And then there was a whole bunch of these .NET guys, and we go straight into arrays, and they just started bombarding me with questions. And I'm like, and I'm just typing in the questions they give it to me, because I can touch type, so I'm busy just looking in the eye. I don't know any of the answers, but I was just going with it, right? And I was learning just as much as they were. So sometimes just doing one thing, you don't have to do the entire code kata. I was once said that you'd only truly know Ruby if you can do all of the Ruby cones in under an hour. And the best I could do is I got 73% in an hour. So I guess that's an indicator that I still need to do more. The other one was mentioned, and that's Code Wars. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is a really great tool just to get a little kick in the day, right? Okay, this is quite a tougher question, but you kind of go with it as you go. You kind of say, okay, this is going to take me half an hour, and those are the ones that you aim with. And as you do them over and over and over, eventually you'll be doing them in 10 minutes. So then you move up a step. So it's fairly simple. You just have a place where you can put the solution. But the really important stuff comes in, okay, here I just get the thing. And usually when I do it, I don't try do the one-line answer. You'll see lots of people. I'll try to put other practices in, so I'll do good design decisions and try to do the answer in a very different way. And then at the end, you get to see everybody else's answers. And this is how you learn sugar. This is like the cake-making factory. There's sugar upon sugar upon sugar. And then, we learn so many cool little nitbits to Ruby by doing this. You'll see that some are really clever, and others are best practice. So you get to see both sides of the world. So just from doing this, it's very simple, right? These are 15-minute things. You'll have time every day to do one of these. There's a smart way, and then there's a right way of doing things, right? And you don't need to spend hours sharpening your skills. It can be just a quick here and there. And the great thing with that application, Code Wars, something that you can also think about is after you've done the solution, just switch the language, and you can grab a new one. They have quite a variety. So once you kind of modeled it out in your brain, jump into Haskell and pray for your life. All right. Okay, the overnight. Now it's getting a bit saucy. Okay, so we're quite privileged. We're quite privileged at Prodigy. We have the best team, and everybody's thinking about each other and how we can improve our skills. And last year, just after I had all these questions and I started taking notes, they proposed that we do a hackathon. So I was so excited. I just started throwing ideas on the board. As you can see, we had this is some of the guys, no days off, right? And this is an hour just before the hackathon started, and then it got crazy, right? We had people just going at it, and I had submitted my own little project, but I knew it was going to be too late. No one's going to join me because it was on the last day that I submitted it. But I decided, if you look in my browser, I have this little bookmark tab, and I think if you had to liken my browser to anything, it's going to be a hoarder's house, and it's just full of rubbish everywhere. So I had all these things that I'd always wanted to do. So I had plugins that I wanted to try, and like these cool little tools that I wanted to do. And this was the way that I could take all of that and just condense it in one 24-hour action-packed adventure. And I got to practice all the stuff and out came Sentry. I know this name is actually taken for a thing, but I saw a problem. It was something that was annoying me, and that was we had multiple systems, microservice, and each of them had secrets, and there was 4 environments per application. So you have production, you have your staging, you have your test, and you have your development, and each of them have to have different secrets because you don't want to pass it around. You don't want some developer sticking it by accident, like on the repo in Git or something. Right, so I built this thing that can take all the different secrets and you can add them manually, and it encrypts it, and you can click one button and it syncs everything, puts all the stuff everywhere. And I got to play with all the plugins that everyone in, and a WYSIWYG. I even put a WYSIWYG in it. I was just like, I'm just doing everything. This application is just going to be my playground. And the end of that 24 hours, I was exhausted, but I was ecstatic. I had gone from 0 to value in 24 hours. And usually that's quite hard, right? What I learned is Ruby is amazing. Ruby, there's no language like it that you can go from nothing to everything in 24 hours. That's a really, really great thing to know. And that best practices are best. I remember the first hour, I was just like, I don't have time for tests. I'm by myself, right? And nothing worked until I wrote tests. And then I was like, oh, yes, that's why. All right, the next one, the weekend away. Right? This is what we're doing right now. But I've got a few pictures here. This is of the DCamp 2 years back. So this is like some of us all standing around. So this is the hack and yak. So sometimes some people wanted to go hack, other people wanted to talk about stuff. And then we did, this is Conway's Game of Life. So we were all pairing and we were just splitting off. But the most recent one, instead of doing a Conway's, we decided, let's build an application just off the scratch. And so we always have this dot voting idea where you put up all your ideas and everyone kind of feels influenced by all the other dots. So if you really like it, you just put 3 dots on your thing, right? So we built democracy. So, yeah, this was a really quite a cool thing. So we add topics, right? Then everybody can just cast your votes on the things that you like. Right? And then at the end, we had the live results of what you wanted to do. And that was really, really fun. Best practice, we got to sit with other people, see how they coded. It was a really, really great activity, right? And also here at Rubyfuza, that's another conference. And we're getting to spend a whole weekend away with Ruby, and you're going to have this buzz for like another week. I'm going to go write my own compiler with bytecode, and I'm going to go try Kafka, and it's just really great. You got all these crazy ideas. I'm going to go hack my brother's computer. I'm going to take screenshots of everything, right? All right, this is some of the photos from last year. Right? Everybody enjoying themselves. All right, so what are the things we can learn from these sort of events, right? We can learn more by teaching than by being taught. And so that's a really great principle. And Ruby's really strong. Their community is all about this. Programming is art. I wish I'd written this after I listened to Caroline's talk, because she mentioned that we're not going to be artists. Very close. I got very close. All right. The next one out is the weekly night out passion project. And this is the one where people have the hardest time with because it can take the most time. And many of us have families and family responsibilities. And it wasn't until just recently I listened to a presentation by a guy called Craig Rodney, and he owns @SouthAfrica at Instagram. He owns that account, and it was his passion project. So it was completely unrelated to programming, but a lot of the principles that he gave out, I was like, no, I'm determined. I'm going to be doing this. And so I started implementing it this year. All right, so what is a passion project? A passion project, the average human will be doing something until they die. My grandfather was an engineer, and he built bridges. He laid lots of railway. But now that he's retired, he sits at home and he builds chairs. His real love is woodwork. So what are the things that keep you going, right? What do you do on the weekends? What do you do in your spare time, right? These are your passion projects. These are the things that you want to do. And I've had many an application end just like this. It can sign you in, and it got really cool authentication, and like everything else works, but that's as far as you get. You're like, yes, 2 weeks in, and I've got like 20 of these. So if anybody needs an application that's got like ready built auth, I got that all for you. All right. But another passion project of mine was the Rubyfuza site. So when I first started helping out with Rubyfuza, it was from a DCamp. And so I started maintaining the site and was using a deprecated static site generator. And so last year I rewrote it in everything. I wrote it in Middleman and Jekyll and Jenkins and you just name it, it did it all. And then I stuck with Middleman. And then this year I went from the site taking like 10 to 15 seconds to load because it was on a free Heroku instance and it kept on falling asleep. So I was like, enough of this. So we put it on GitLab and we got it down to like 2 seconds now. So with a lot of optimization. So this has been a really cool thing. I spend like 3 months of my life every year making the Ruby site more awesome. And so that's been a really cool thing. It's taught me a lot about developing websites and getting from something that's really got value and giving it a bit more. So, okay, disclaimer, don't use this advice that I'm about to give you in your social relationships at all. Things will go very bad, right? But if work is like your relationship with your wife, right, you're bound by contract, or your I won't say wife, I'll say significant other. If you're bound by contract, and without them, you're going to die or not survive, right? You can't wash your own clothes, and well, I can't. But, right? So I'll probably just like go away. I'll just disappear, right? I'm not the greatest human being. But, your passion project should be like your mistress. Then it's fun. Then it's exciting. Then you'll go and spend time with it. And the average American, I don't think we could be classified as average American, but the average American spends 608 hours on social media a year and 1,642 hours on TV. That's a ton. But I think because we are developers, we're actually really closely fitted with the American lifestyle. So I think we're pretty much on the same line. And what Craig Rodney said is that, just do one commit a day for 365 days. Just one small change, and you'll have something at the end of it. So commit to a 365 project, right? People want their stories told and to be engaged. And the things that I learned about doing this, right, is create your passion project for a single person. Luckily, my wife, she's got her thing, and I'm building my product around her needs. And so it's really cool. Everything that I do is going to give her value. Force scarcity, just lust for that. Because if you limit the amount of money that you're putting into it and limit the amount of time that you're putting into it, it forces you to make really smart decisions. You have to make those good decisions. Push your skills. Don't do something that you're just comfortable in. Go and learn something new. Go do something that's going to take you up a level. And you're failing in a forest, right? So if a tree falls in a forest, can you hear it? What about failing? You have to achieve a certain amount of success in order for you to fail. So if you don't try, right, right now you have to get somewhere. My projects are all at auth still. So, right, so that's it. That's just a few data ideas. I'm pretty sure there's a lot more. I work with an amazing team at Prodigy Finance. We do things, and I'm privileged because like most of the stuff I wouldn't be able to do if I wasn't there. We did the hackathon. They enabled me to come to these sort of conferences where you think outside the box. So if you have any questions about my slide, I should have actually put like software sorcerer. Yeah, but if you have any questions about Prodigy Finance or what we do, you can just call me down. Do you have any questions? Anybody got something you'd like to ask? Yeah, sure. I'll pass it along. Cool. Sweet. Well, thank you very much.